Welcome to the Hyper Growth Zone podcast. This is your go-to resource for personal growth, mastering communication, and influencing and persuasion techniques that will help you unleash the full potential of yourself and others. Here is your host, Alex Morgan.
Welcome to another episode of the Hyper Growth Zone podcast. My name is Alex Morgan, and I'm a master trainer of hypnosis and NLP. In this episode, we are introducing Chad Jenkins, a lifelong entrepreneur and visionary known for reshaping businesses to deliver remarkable returns. With 3 groundbreaking methods and boundless curiosity, he serves as a catalyst for business growth. Collaborating with leaders across industries, he uncovers hidden opportunities, achieving exponential enterprise value growth. Chad's track record includes 40-plus high-growth companies and numerous successful growth partnerships. Now he empowers others through growth collaboration partnerships and the Seed Spark Growth Academy. His new book, Just Add a Zero, is a guide to outperforming competitors and achieving exponential growth through collaboration. All right, welcome, Chad. Thanks so much for coming on the show. I appreciate you being here.
Alex, I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, so I was just looking into, you have your new book out, Just Add a Zero. Yeah. And one of the things I wanted to explore is why business leaders should just add a zero. So can you go into that a bit of what that means and why they should do it?
Oh, absolutely. At the foundation of it, it is today we're exposed to an exceptional amount of conventional thinking. It produces conventional results, and we become conventional people. But even since birth, we are afforded and empowered with the capability of thinking outside of the box. And Just Add a Zero encourages once you begin to get outside the box, not look back at the label. So by just adding a zero, and most that I chat with, initially, we'll just add a zero to the backside. So if it's 10, make it 100. If it's 1,000,000, make it 10. If it's 10, make it 100 million. That works. And the same exact outcome can be produced. But at the same time, let's say that you have 10 salespeople and 6 are producing, 4 are not. You're thinking, I need to get rid of 2, and let's just see if the other 2 will whip into shape. Why don't you put that 0 on the front? So if you have 10, let's go back to 1. Let's unpack. How can we actually reach our revenue goals through an unconventional method? And instead of managing all these 10 salespeople, which of course, if you have 10, you probably have at least one manager of them, you can begin to do some different things in your business to create a lot larger outcome with a whole lot different margin than is the conventional wisdom in your industry. But we get inside this zone of blinders or not adding a zero and just taking what the rest of everyone is doing as the gospel and executing accordingly. I've never been considered as a Me Too guy. The Just Add a Zero began at about the age of 8. I figured out what my father made. I did the reverse math back down to the minute. I was like, that's not that bad of a number. I'll just add a zero to it. Well, then when you do the forward math back out to the year, it's a little bit different of a number. And that level of difference, and they say people are motivated by 2 things, fear and greed. I was motivated by both. I wanted that number, and I was scared to death of, I have no idea how to get there. And what it made me do is take a look at very natural things that were at my fingertips. I could recombine to create something that was exponentially more value than the original convention or understanding of what those things are. So to really answer your question, by just adding a zero, it empowers business leaders and other people, even individuals, to look at things in a completely different light and not be okay with 20% year-over-year growth or a 20% margin on this. Well, why? Because the conventional cost of goods is X. Well, I don't even like that. Who told you that? I'd love to trust you, but I have to verify it. And what you find is whenever you begin to verify it and really dig deeper on what the components and capabilities you have at your fingertips in your business, you can create some wildly different outcomes.
Yeah, that's just what I was thinking, because you're talking about different businesses using this. So what are some of the really big outcomes that you've seen created from this just out of zero? I mean, I'm sure you've seen plenty. You've had this going since you were 8, so there's got to be something that you can show.
Absolutely. So in many instances, and we'll take it back to 8, when I added a 0, and it became very clearly obvious to me at 8 years old, how in the heck am I going to create value like that? It forced me to take stock and inventory of everything that was at my fingertips. And a little bit of the way I mentioned it earlier, look at what you already have. Not that you need to go build this building, add manufacturing space. We don't need to go hire this additional sales force or start this other business or make this huge investment or hire this particular guy. You already have all the capabilities at your fingertips that you need to create these very large outcomes. So I was able to do that. Even at a very early age, I was trained to ride horses really before I could even walk. So I quickly realized that if you are a kid, and I will classify it as a peanut kid because I was very small when I was young, and you ride a horse, and the person's horse that you're riding wants to sell that horse at a horse sale, they're happy to pay you $10 to $20 to ride your horse back and forth, because if a kid or peanut is riding this horse, the people in the stands that are raising their hand to buy it, they think, oh, anybody can ride that horse. Not 100% true at all. Not truly, it wasn't. But it empowered me to make anywhere from $200 to $300 a week at a single digit age. Going beyond that, I wanted to elevate to have an actual company. So luckily, the great state of South Carolina at 15 years old, you can drive. And I grew up on a farm, so I actually drove to get my license, got my license and drove home. But of course, the second part of that was legal. So just adding 0, even back to that original number, right? I'm still on this quest to reach my number. And I'm leveraging this thinking to look at my capabilities at my fingertips. And on the farm, I had a truck, I had a trailer, I had a tractor, I had a bush hog. Therefore, if you combine all those, I had a landscape company. But then I had somewhat of unlimited resources. People that went to my high school also grew up on farms. They knew how to drive tractors. So I just began to combine those resources to create a much bigger outcome. And that was one of my first actual companies. Yes. And I continue to do this same thing today, helping businesses all around the world and quite a few of the operating companies that I own today. That's
super cool because you kind of tied it all back in together. You were kind of like, we already businesses probably already have everything they need. It's just a matter of thinking kind of outside the box. Like it's all thinking. Yeah. So that's a really good point. That's kind of what I picked up when he said that. I'm like, he knew he already had the resources. And the work I do when I work with clients too, I'm basically connecting them to the resources they have inside of themselves, like in their unconscious mind, which it already knows what we need to do. It's just a matter of connecting to it.
That's exactly correct. And I made that comment earlier. Whenever you begin to think this way, be super cautious of turning around and looking at the label when you begin to get outside that box, right? Because it'll suck you back into the conventional wisdom. And I would strongly encourage you not to do that, to think freely. The work that you're doing that empowers people to elevate to their full potential that they always had inside of them. It's sort of the work that I do with organizations and entrepreneurs specifically is to do very similar to the resources they have inside their business. It's very, very similar. So yeah, what a great point.
Yeah, that's awesome how everything kind of connects like this. So one of the other things that you're really big on are 3 proven methods to create exponential growth. So can you go into each of those 3 methods and give us a nice snapshot of that?
Yeah, no problem. So one of those is remove the film. And another component that I developed at a very early age is I hung around folks that were 20 or 30 years my senior, people that were my father's age. So I'm a sponge, right? I understand now that from 1 to 7, we're in theta. So we're downloading things in our subconscious. My activity today is driven by a lot by that. So I'm around those people. And of course, what are you supposed to do when you're around elders? Keep your mouth shut. God gave us 4 inputs and 1 output. I try my very best to use them proportionally. Independent of us being on a podcast, I always have to do most of the talking. It's a little out of character for me. But with that consideration, what do you hear? Complaints. A lot of them, right? So think of it for business owners who are listening, think of the way to work this morning or travel. The first couple calls you got, probably were not all congratulatory calls. There's two ways to interpret what you're being given. Yeah, I'm hearing it, and it's frustrating. I began to ask myself questions at a very early age. It's like, okay, I'm hearing this common. There's a commonalities between these complaints, and I call them frictions, right? So it's just in the way in which you interpret it and your perspective. So for me, I created this methodology called remove the film. Film stands for friction, identification, leverage, the market. So even at a very early age, I was just listening, and including that landscape business, that came from me listening. And there was a friction. There were all these banks, this one particular guy had access to, and they would buy parcels for future development of branches. Well, guess what you do not need? You don't need them landscaped, but their city ordinances says, you better not let that overgrow because it's beside a nice shopping center, so they need it bush hogged, right? Here I am. That is a clear component of remove the film. All I was doing was listening, and I heard complaint or commonality, and I began to see trending in these frictions, or i.e. complaints, and I began to ask myself questions. If I resolve this, does it just help the guy that I'm hearing, even inside of your business? Or that complaint that you heard this morning, if you were to take the time to resolve it, does it help everybody who's in a similar size business or similar type business that you're in your local market? Or if you resolve it, does it help everybody who's in a business in your country or on your continent? When I began to get yeses, I began to think about forming a business. I've done it many, many times, and I've birthed businesses out of existing entities or organizations that I was running just because I was listening and embracing the friction that people were having, to the extent as well, go on a few client calls, be really intent about what they're saying. And sometimes, and this will make sense certainly for the work that you're doing, sometimes it's not so much the words that they're using, but what's behind the words they're using. How are they setting? What is their body language telling you? But you're looking for that commonality. When you find it, consider solving it. And guess what you have when you do that? Built-in clients that you already have a relationship with. It's happened many, many times over. I had a wireless business, early 2000s maybe. It's probably early 20s. And that was born out of a completely different business. It's horse trailers and feed and tack and panels and gates. And if there's anybody in the U.S., there's a concept called tractor supply. And I basically built one of those before it actually existed for Purina Mills a long time ago. This guy came about wanted some of these mobile phones, and I recognized I could press a button and dictate the outcome way far away. That was a friction that I experienced. And not only did I say, "Ooh, I'll buy those," how can you sell those? And I became the largest distributor of the Southeast of those particular phones. But along that journey, what I recognized is everyone's bill was jacked up. They were adding phones. Back then, text messaging was just becoming, I would say, mainstream. It was right before BlackBerry. And they would charge you for text messages. Can you imagine that now? So your wireless bill was wildly out of control. It was like, hold up, what are the facts? What are the resources I have at my fingertips, right? So you're going to see a little commonality or the stacking these methodologies that create the outcome. I have a lot of folks that work for me, and they have to have knowledge of the current rate plan. It's required. They are talking to people about these rate plans all the time. So if I just get usage data and run a little bit of, at that time it wasn't called machine learning, but trending and some if-then statements, then I can match usage patterns with these rate plans that keep changing every 30 days. And what comes out of the bottom is real value creation because it saves millions of dollars. It became $20 million a year of recurring revenue at a very early age. So that's one particular way to embrace the frictions that you're hearing on a daily basis. And just ask a couple of questions. It could potentially be a more wildly successful and profitable business than what you currently are in. And you don't have to hear those complaints anymore. You can hear new complaints.
One of the things that I picked up on too was when you were talking about just listening, and most of the time what people are saying, there's a lot more going on. So obviously to identify the actual friction, if you're listening and you know there's a lot more going on, you said, when I was at a young age, I was asking myself a lot of questions. Oftentimes we can find what's really going on with a person too if we take note and just ask them questions as well. So that's one thing I was thinking about when you were talking. One of the other things that we were kind of talking about before we started recording was different collaborations. So you kind of have this concept of growth collaborations. Yes. Can you tell everyone listening, because collaboration is really how you get so much success. You need people to help you along the way, or you need to help others. That's how you really get there. So why is that so important?
So it's so important because it's so authentic to growth. And I'll give you some real fundamental understanding that I have. Future is collaboration. It takes more than one thing. It takes a multitude of things to create something new and even future. So I have another saying that guides me. The obstacle is the way, and collaboration is the way through it. So you pretend as if in your business, you're facing some big obstacle. It's a big boulder right in front of you, and there's a little crack in it. If you could peer down inside that crack, and with the conventional understanding of business and how we grow today, it's a very small crack. But if you could peer down inside that crack, there's somebody on the other end, there's a collaborator with his hand out saying, this is the way through. And if you would just reach out and grab that collaborator's hand, you and your capabilities, not changing who you are, but truly your capabilities, your pricing, your positioning, your staffing, your geography, your digital presence, combined with whoever that collaboration partner is, their being, their person, their location, their pricing, their client base, their reach. When you combine the two, it creates an immense amount more value. Everybody gets to be who they are, and you get right over that boulder that's in front of you. So I've expanded collaboration, and I would give some context to that. The initial form of collaboration is, and I sort of touched on it earlier, your products and services, you be who you are, your money is your money. Somebody else's money is their money, and their products and services are theirs. But the correct collaboration is whatever you really dig deeper to understand, even your organization's authentic expression, just like you would as a human. And I define collaboration as the unique value creation that is naturally, it's through natural attraction when you understand the authentic expression of people, places, and things. So if you apply it to business, your products and services, my products and services, but when they come together, they create this new. It is paramount that we name this new product and service, even if it's a code name to begin. A lot of times we pass clients back and forth because we're in a similar industry. Like, yeah, that sounds great. But what happens when it gets beyond you and me? Our sales teams don't know that. Is it that we haven't given it an identity? So if you had a baby and I had a baby, are we going to call it the baby? Because I'm not sure which one's yours or mine. Within reason. You're a little bit further away, so it's probably not running in your backyard, right? But if you consider that, we don't do that in our businesses. We create intellectual property every day, but we don't name it. Well, if you don't name it, nobody can understand it and reach out and grab it. It has no identification other than inside of your organization. So why would it work in a collaboration? I would strongly suggest to consider when you're in collaboration with another person, place, or thing, and you can understand that you're creating new value, give that an identity. As I've said, it can be a code name. But when you move to what I classify as stage 2 in collaboration, that code name, if you really think about it, of how you have named it, so that what I classify as your same hero target, remember your products and services and my products and services combine to create a new value. I want to name that so it speaks directly to whoever our businesses collectively together and the product and services that we now have created means something to a hero target. Well, when that happens, keep it in mind, you didn't have to change who you are, and I didn't either. We just came together. You have something to put on your website and to market from and to tell your sales team about. I do too. And if you think about it, if we're providing these products and services, whether it be 2 of us or 3 of us in collaboration, you've now made it a fundamental rule of business, easy for people to do business with you. Because they could come to another one of you and they could come to another one of me and they could get 2 proposals and come up with 2 agreements and sign 2 contracts and get 2 invoices, or they can begin to, stage 3, ask for this product or service that now has an identity. The evolution of what I just shared with you over a long period of time, that can transform industries. It's happened in the past. Because the consumer or your hero target, they don't want to go to 3 or 4 different ones. If you really get serious about collaboration, they want to go to 1. And when they go to 1, they get 4. Well, your cost of goods probably went down. Certainly your marketing budget. You've now, in this example of 4 collaborations, you've 4x'd your sales team And I've said it a couple times in this description. You didn't change who you were. You didn't go hire a bunch of other people. You didn't change all your pricing matrix. All you did is focus on your hero target and understand along their own growth journey, you might, and this is a very strong way that you can identify collaborations. If you think about your hero target and picture them walking down the street, you're in the middle. They're coming from the left and they're going to go to the right. Well, before they get to you, guess what they're engaged with? A person, place, or thing. One of those things could be a business. Focus on that. Then they get to you and you do an awesome job. Best job you've ever done. When you really focus on that hero target, they are almost required, or naturally, they will take an additional action once you do what it is that you do the best that you've ever done it. That's your next collaboration. So if you can combine those three, it truly is a clear example of what I shared earlier. You guys can name it, and now before too long, market it on all your websites. And if the market begins to ask for this, you have created competitive advantage for yourself, obviously, right? Because nobody else can deliver it. They only deliver a third of what I just gave you as an example. So those types of things, and you talked about the book earlier, Just Add a Zero. On the very front of it, the tagline, remove the film, name your price, and remove the competition, right? So just in the way through it is collaboration, as I mentioned. So hopefully you can take parts or pieces of that and apply it to your own business or even to your own self and begin to remove the competition, and ultimately you set your own price.
Yeah, what you just said takes it to a whole new level than just, like you said, passing clients around. You're in a similar industry. It's obviously much more than that. So let's say there's some people listening and they're kind of like a collaboration. Like, there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there. They want to be the one to, let's say, do it themselves or build like a company of one. So how can someone develop, let's say, like a collaborator's mindset? What would you advise these people to do with your experience doing this?
So a very good friend of mine, Dan Sullivan, and Miss Dr. Brent Hardy wrote a book, Who, Not How. I have an evolution of that methodology, and it's nothing new without a who. To me, it's practical application of that theory. So if I am a army of one, or industry of one, I am looking for things that are going to help me grow. I'm going to have unlimited ideas about that. If you take this nothing new without a who strategy, it means I can't add things to my plate. I have to add who's. Well, I only have so much of a budget, and I don't have the available resources to go hire these people. Plus, I want to stay small. Collaboration is the way. And then one other thing, say, well, because I don't have this budget, I can't hire these people. What the heck am I going to do? And that's where another one of my concepts that has evolved, and I believe it is also where I heard it first. Every dollar in your organization is committed. It's either going to payroll taxes, payroll, cost of goods, overhead, rent, et cetera, or savings or R&D. Every dollar today in your organization is already committed. So for somebody to come along and sell you something, it means that you have to take money away from something you already had committed and give it to them. I feel like that's not the easiest way to do business, but this person of Army of One wants to create this outcome. That's why they want to grow. If they can get really intentional and understanding of what that outcome is going to produce, that's future money. That's a lot easier to part with. So if I want to identify collaborations, I'm looking for the obstacles that are facing me in my business. And then I say, well, heck, how can I go pay for them? Because I can't hire those people. Then I'm going to focus a lot on what that additional future outcome is going to create, understand the profitability of that outcome. And now I'm going to split that future money with my collaborating partners. That's the way that you exponentially grow. And perhaps you want to go back and do it the old school way. Guess what your pocket is full of to go back and do it the conventional way? Money. You got there a whole lot faster though. And this time, the second time around, you're more than welcome to do things that I've done in the past, which is hire a sales team 2 or 3 times in a row. How about let's go ahead and tweak the comp plan and create the comp plan, sales comp plan 4 or 5 times and run off some good salespeople. Like you can just forego all of that. Let's partner on future outcomes, leveraging collaboration as a way, and you truly could be an industry of one. That's a great question though. Thank you.
No, actually, once you said that, I think I read that book last year. And so anyone listening, it's really good. It gives a lot of examples from what I remember. I read so many books, so it's hard for me to really be like, oh yeah, I remember this story and this story. I read 80, 90 books a year. So it's difficult it's difficult for me to remember everything that happened, but that's a really good point. So anyone listening, they should definitely read it. Now, collaboration, there's a lot of things that you're talking about, that future money. What are some of the other tangible or intangible benefits of collaboration? Does it also save you lots of time, energy? What do you notice as far as this as well?
Collaboration as a fundamental strategy. When I'm partnering on future money, I'm not paying what somebody puts in a proposal. So if I've really found, in this example that I shared earlier, the right who, I'm also combining another methodology. Wealthy people, they don't try to trade time for money. They just don't, right? So I want the best person on the planet to accomplish and help me accomplish this next iteration of business growth. Well, if I partner on future money, I'm not having to try to whittle them down, right? Everybody wins whenever the outcome happens. So yes, not only do I get the best talent, I get the best runway or timeline. Because if you have the best talent, you don't have to hire a lot of managers to manage them and hopefully keep the eye on the prize of what the outcome is. No, it's not coming Thursday or every 2 weeks in a paycheck. It's coming when we actually reach the goal. So it empowers you to go much, much faster. It also reduces a lot of the complaints that we hear around HR and management, because you're dealing with people who understand and are aligned with the vision, and they understand what winning is as well. So yes, the cycles of business growth, that flywheel is turning much, just considerably faster. And guess who those people like to hang out with? People like themselves, killers, like hustlers, straight up hustlers. Like when you elevate to this particular level and you begin to engage with folks who have a very similar mindset, but very varying capabilities or unique abilities, it's a whole different world. Yeah, that's a great question, because the impact to your velocity, it's hard to measure actually. I've had many organizations, even from a startup, and just go from zero to hero right quick. And like, wow, how did that happen? Because you had the right people. How many times have we been told, hire the right people and get the right people on the right seats of the bus? Yeah, this is a mechanism to empower you. Even if you're a startup, if you're starting out, you're not going to get a bunch of money. You're saying, look, I know what this can create. I have this big vision. Because a ton of us entrepreneurs are straight up visionaries. I mean, there's some blocking and tackling, some operational, astute people, but a lot of us, big visionaries. So paint that picture, understand what the outcome can be, get really chiseled on what that real benefit is going to be, share that vision with the other types of people, and only take the ones that align with it, who you know are killers in their own right. And you'll see how quick you can actually create that reality. That was also a great question. Thank you.
That was a great answer. You also talked about being around the right people and all of this. So where, in your experience, where have you found, like, being around the right people? How did you find them and things like this? Just to give a little insight, if you don't mind, so people can think like, so that's all I got to do.
Not that I've joined a bunch of groups whatsoever, but I had an older gentleman who's a developer. This gentleman gave me a gratitude rock in 2006. I didn't even know what that was. It turns out now a very good personal friend of mine was in the movie The Secret, and he's given tens of thousands of those rocks out. So I get one in 2006, and this older gentleman as well, he said, and he told me a long time ago, he said, you think differently. And I, of course, was in conventional business services companies at that time. I probably had 5 or 6. He said, you think differently. I'd really like for you to consider going to this thing called strategic coach. What? You go away once a quarter for 2 days, and you begin to think differently, and it will facilitate the way you're wired already. So unbeknownst to me, in 2009, I put down a deposit, but I never went. At that time, I had $40,000 a month going out to cover residential real estate debt. You might remember it was the Great Recession in 2000, maybe 7 or 8, 9. I was also getting married, and shortly after I had a baby on the way, and I sold 4 companies, and the guys, they stopped paying after like 10 or 11 months. It was just not a good time. So I never went. 10 years later, I'm actually standing right here. My configure office was a little bit different. And this lady called and said, hey, Dan's been tracking you for the last 10 years. And last year he's doing this program, doing the particular program, and he wants to know if you would like to come and experience it. So in a split second, for some reason, I said, well, first thing I said is, do I get any time value of money for my deposit? Because I did the reverse math, of course. So what, 5% interest over that time period? That was a funny joke. And no, I didn't get any time value money. And I said, I'll take that deal. And the next morning I got very intentional about going online. I'm you said 80 or 90 books right there with you. Finally trained myself to speed read at about the age of 35. I do book reports in my Apple Notes. It's not as much, I'm not concerned as how much do I read, but what do I retain and how can I apply it? So that's a good little hack for folks, because inevitably you can just drop that in your Apple Notes and you always get immediate access to it. But I decided to take that particular deal. So about 4 or 5 months later, I showed up in Toronto the very first day I knew. I'm in a room of folks that think very similar to I do. And I'm going to pour on the gas. This is invigorating for me. I'm going to understand exactly how I was made and why I was made and the capabilities that I uniquely possess. And I'm going to offer those back to the world. And the rest has kind of been history. So what's the learning? There are groups out there. You may be a fish, and I felt like this, an absolute fish out of water in grade school for the 3 months I went to college. And I decided not to do that because I had 2 or 3 businesses already. Even I never wanted to go to these association organizations because I also still felt like a fish out of water. There are ones like us out there. Strategic Coach, another friend of mine, Joe Polish, has a group called Genius Network. That's an awesome one as well. These people do congregate and they're out to change the world. So hopefully that helps somebody who's listening today.
No, that definitely helps. And, collaboration just generally with everything, obviously exponential growth, like you're saying. So thanks for sharing all this today, Chad. I want to give you an opportunity now to just tell people where they can find you, maybe something you offer if you want to promote it now, where they can find and get your book so people can, have access to you. I think it'd be really helpful.
Absolutely. So the book, you're able to go to justadd0.com, or of course, any Audible, Amazon, anywhere that you get books, it's definitely there. Me personally, LinkedIn is a great, easy way. I have, of course, it managed all the time and you can catch me there. Also chadtjenkins.com. And then when we talk about collaborations, if it's something that you're very intrigued about, I've created collaborations as a business model where I only partner, of course, on future money for growth, net new profit, and net new enterprise value. That's through an organization I own by the name of Seed Spark. Seed Spark, of course, would logically stand for seed the idea, spark the growth. And again, the only compensation for those guys is if you get net new profit, resets every year. So it's quite a compelling offer, I would say. But if you want to explore more of that methodology, I'm happy to share. And I would love for somebody to take the concept and do something 10 times what I have done. So you'll find me to be kind of an open book. Feel free to check that out at seedspark.com and submit there, and somebody will be back in touch with you.
All right, everyone, you heard it. That's where you can get in touch with Chad. He's got a lot of amazing things going on that can help you with your growth. And essentially that's what this podcast is all about. So thanks, Chad, for coming on. I really appreciated the conversation. I learned a lot myself.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, Alex. I very much enjoyed it. And thanks for the opportunity.
So thanks for listening. And wherever you listen to this podcast, please rate the podcast so it can get into the minds of more people. And I'd love to hear your feedback. And I hope to see you on the next episode.